Okay, good morning everyone. I'll be your instructor for today. My name is Elaine again. For today, so we are now on our week 22, the second day of our topic about the topic from the last time. It's about the common phrases and acronyms. So again, I would like to welcome you all on our English Maritime course. So for today, um, as a recap for last week, I already discussed some common phrases in maritime, right? And just a bit of, and we ended the discussion with some of the acronyms. So we will just continue for today the other acronyms in the maritime. So now we have the types of vessels or ships. So I know some of you we already discussed about this, but as a part of the acronyms, I'll going to what do you call review it very quick. So first we have the VLCC, or stands for Very Large Crude Carrier. We also have what you call ULCC, or the Ultra Large Crude Carrier. Another type of vessel is the RORO, or RORO. It is roll on, roll off. This is one of the cargo ship. We also have here the SDBC. So SDBC stands for Single Deck Bulk Carrier. We also have another type of vessel is the STBC. So STBC stands for Self-Trimming Bulk Carrier. So these are some of the types of vessel. So VLCC, ULCC, RORO or RORO, SDBC, and lastly the STBC. So now we will having the navigational tools and systems. So again, it's still all about the acronyms. So I have here first what we call the ECDIS. So ECDIS stands for Electronic Charge Display and Information System. Electronic Charge Display and Information System. So this is a so the electronic chart display, or the ECDIS, this is a computer-based navigation system used on ships to display navigational information. So of course, it includes these electronic charts. So, so this is the ship's position and other sensor data. So like the radar and the AIS. So meaning that this is a digital alternative to traditional paper navigation charts. So this ECDIS, it allows the precise route planning and real-time monitoring of the ship's position on the electronic charts. So you will see here the positions of the vessel and also providing a visual representation of the planned route and its progress. So by displaying the accurate depth information and the potential hazards along the route, so this ECDIS, it helps to prevent grounding and collision. So meaning it enhanced the safety of the crew of the vessel. And it says here that it also offers the automated features like the route, route monitoring, the automatic ETA calculation, and automatic safety warnings. So it will be reducing the navigator's workload. And we have here some types of electronic charts. So first we have the electronic navigational charts. Oh, and stands for the ENCs. So ENCs, this is also a digital charts that developed and updated by hydrographic offices containing the detailed information about depths, hazards, and other navigational features. We have another type of electronic chart is what we call the RNCs. So RNC stands for Raster Navigational Chart. So this version of charts paper often used as a backup or in situations where the ELCs are not available. So again, the two types of the electronic charts, we have the ENCs and the RNCs. So next, we have here what we call the RGNSS. So here, the RGNSS. So it stands for the Differential Global Navigation Satellite System. So what is this RGNSS? So this one, it enhanced the accuracy of the standard global navigation satellite system. It's like the GPS. So it achieves this by using a reference receiver at a known location to calculate and transmit the corrections by nearby users. So by reducing the errors caused by factors like the atmospheric conditions and satellites, so this results in significant improvement, positioning the accuracy often down to the centimeter level. So how does it work? So an RGNSS system use as a receiver at a precisely known location. So this receiver constantly monitors the GNSS signals and calculate the difference between its actual position and on the position determined by the GNSS satellites. Another one is for the correction of error. So, in this indifference or error is due to various factors. So, like the atmospheric delays, on satellite clocks errors, and signal multipath. So, the reference situation then generates the correct data to account to these errors. So another one is to use this the correction data is transmitted to nearby user receivers. So it's often via radio signals. And the user receiver applies this correction to its own GNSS measurements. So in this result, they will get the accurate position determination. So what are the benefits of this DGNS? First, of course, to improve the accuracy. How do we get this accuracy? So the DGNS can dramatically improve positioning accuracy, potentially by a factor of 100 or more. So from meters to centimeters. Another reason is by real-time correction. So the corrections are typically transmitted in real time. So it allows for immediate use by users. Another one is the error reduction. So meaning that the DGNSS, it helps to mitigate various errors that affect the standard the GNSS, such as ephemeris errors, clock errors, and the atmospheric delays. And lastly, is for the versatile application. So, this is used for various fields, so including the maritime navigation, surveying, and precision agriculture. So, where the accurate position is crucial. Okay? So next that we have here is what we call the EPIRB. So the EPIRB stands for the emergency position indicating radio beacons. So EPIRB. So what is this EPIRB? So this is a crucial piece of safety equipment used at sea to alert search and rescue authorities during some emergencies. So it is a portable or battery powered radio transmitted that sends out distress signals. So including the location of the vessel or person in distress that needed to be rescued or someone's needing a rescue. So how this EPIRB works or uses or the function of this device. First is the alerting the authorities. So when activated, an EPIRB transmit a distress signals to the COSPAS SARSAT satellite system. So it's alerting the search and rescue services. Next is the location pinpointing. So the signal contains the vessel's location, information. So it enables the authorities to quickly locate and respond to the emergencies. So we have also a different types of APIRB. So the 406 MHZ EPIRB, these are the most common type and operate using the satellite to transmit the distress signals. And we have also the category 1. So this can be activated either manually or automatically when deployed or submerged. So this category 1, this is the float free or automatically activated. While we also have the category 2. So these are manual activation beacon that are typically carried by individuals in ditch bags or life rafts. So if we have the automatic, we also have this manually operated. Next that we have is what we call the DSC or the Digital Selective Calling. So what is this DSC? So this is a system used in maritime radio communication to send the digital messages for distress alerts, urgency, safety, and routine calls. So this is the a key part of the global maritime distress and safety system or the GMDSS because the DSC It enables the mariners to send automatic distress alert to rescue authorities and initiate or receive calls to other vessels or shore stations. So how do we use this or the benefits of this DSC? So here, so how this is work? So the DSC is uses as a digital data rather than voice. So to transmit the information, increasing the range and accuracy. It allows for the transmission of predefined messages such as the distress alerts, urgencies messages, safety messages, and also the routine calls. So, DSC is also uses a unique maritime mobile service identity or what we call the MMSI. So, this is the number of identity of each vessel allowing for direct call. Another one is in distress situations. So the DSC can automatically transmit the vessel's position and other relevant information. So what are the benefits of this DSC? So first is the automated distress alerts. So the DSC, it allows for the quick and efficient transmission of distress, including the vessel's identity, position, and the nature of distress. So directly to rescue services and other vessels. Another one is the targeted communication. So the DSC allowing for calling specific vessel or group of vessels rather than broadcasting to everyone on the channel. So it improves the communication efficiency. So part of the GMDSS is the DSC. This is the crucial component of the GMDSS. So which is a global system designed to improve the maritime safety and ensure a coordinated response to emergency. So we are now on our next acronyms. It's about the cargo and operations. So first, we have here what we call the TEU. So what is this TEU? So the TEU stands for 20-foot equivalent unit. So this one is the unit of cargo, the cargo capacity. So this is primarily used to measure the container ships and container terminals. So these have the standard container. So the TEU is based on the dimensions of a standard. So 20-foot shipping container, which is 20 feet long. So 8 feet wide and 8.5 feet high. So here, so I have here some chart. So the capacity measurement, the TEU is used to quantify the total cargo capacity of a container, ship, or terminal. So the global trade impact of this, it plays a vital role in global trade by standardizing the container size. So it enables the efficient and cost-effective movement of goods across the different modes of transportation. Okay, so this standardized unit is um, is very essential for global trade because it enables the efficient transportation of goods. So across the various modes of transport. So it including the ships, trucks, and also train. So next that we have here is what we call the LCL or less than container load. So it is a shipping method where goods from the multiple shippers are combined into one container. So this one. So meaning there's a more than two or three shippers inside this container. So the LCL shipping consolidates the smaller shipment into a single container. This allows the business with limited cargo volume to utilize the sea freight, so which is generally more cost effective than air freight for larger volumes. So when to use the LCL? So we have here some options. So if you have less than a full container's worth of cargo, or you have your cargo volume is less than 18 cubic meter or 10 cubic meter, or if the air freight is too expensive or not suitable for your goods. So that's the time we're going to use the LCL or less than container load. So what is the benefits of this? So first we have cost effectiveness. So it can be more cost effective for smaller shipments compared to air freight or underutilized FCL container. We also have the potential drawbacks. So the LCL shipments may involve a slightly longer transit time due to the consolidations and the consolidation process. This might be also more handling involved. So the benefit is this. It first is the cost savings. So you only pay for the space for your good occupancy. Next is flexibility. It allows for smaller, more frequent shipment. Another one is to reduce the carbon footprints. So meaning it potentially lower the emission compared to the individual FCL shipment or air freight. And lastly, the inventory management. So it enables a more leaner inventory level. So if we have the LCL, we also have here what we call the FCL. So the FCL stands for the full container load. So this time, this is the shipping method where the single shipper use the entire space within the shipping container. So here, the benefits of this FCL. First, of course, it's cost effectiveness. So the FCL can be more cost effective for the larger shipments, while the LCL may be more suitable for only smaller volumes. So the standard container size are 20 foot and 40 foot. So it also refer to as a 20-foot equivalent units or the TEU and the 40-foot equivalent units or the FEU. So another one is one shipper, one bill of loading. So in FCL, there is usually one shipper and one bill to lading or what we call the BOL. So for the entire container, even if the container is not completely full. control and speed. So the FCL, it offers more control over the shipping process and can be faster as the container is dedicated to a single shipper's good. So next that we have here is what we call the DWT. So the DWT, this is a measure of the total weight of a ship that can safely carry, including the cargo, fuel, and water and stores. So what includes this WT? So encompasses the weight of all items a ship can carry, such as the cargo, fuel, fresh water, ballast water, provisions, passengers, and the crew. So it is very important that the DWT is a key metric for assessing a ship's cargo carrying capacity and is essential for determining the profitability of the shipping operations. And the DWT should not be confused with gross tonnage or what we call the GT, which measures the total internal volume of a vessel. So next we have here the FOIST or FOIST, which stands for free in, out, stowed, and trimmed. So this is the ship owner is responsible for the cost of loading, unloading, stowing, and trimming of cargo. So while the ship owner is responsible for the actual transportation of the cargo. So it's very essential that the ship owner handles all aspects of the cargo handling within the vessels while the shippers manage getting the cargo to and from of the port. So here, when we say free in or out, the shipper pays the loading of the cargo into the vessel. So that's the free in. And unloading it at the destination is the free out. Stowed. So the ship owner is the responsible for properly arranging and securing the cargo within the vessel's hold, while the ship owner is also responsible for the distributing and leveling the cargo to ensure the vessel remains stable during the voyage. So that's what we call the trim. So in essence of this voice, it relieves the charterer of the direct cost and responsibility of these specific cargo handling operations within the ship, but they still manage the overall transportation process. Next acronym is DFAS, or stands for Free Alongside Ship. So free alongside ship, or FAS, is an inter So this FAS has a typically used for a non-containerized cargo, such as the break bulk shipment. So this is where the goods can be easily placed next to the vessel at the port. So here in FAS, so once the goods are alongside the vessel, the buyer assume all subsequent costs and risks, including loading, transportation, and import procedures. So it's all about um, the seller's responsibility. So next is what we have here is the CFR. So CFR stands for the cost and freight. So the CFR, this is the international trade term. So especially for Incoterm, this is used for the contracts for sea or inland waterways transport. So here, the seller also handles export custom clearance and loading the goods into vessel. So once the goods are on board, the risk of loss or damage transfers to the buyer. So the buyer is the responsible for import duties, unloading, and any further transportation. So important note that the CFR is specifically for sea and inland waterway transport. If insurance coverage is desired, the CIF or the cost, insurance, and freight is more appropriate in Incoterm. So here, that the buyer is responsible for clearing the goods through customs at the destinations. So next acronym that we have here is what we call the ETA. So the ETA stands for the estimated time of arrival. So this is the prediction of when something or someone is expected to reach a specific location. So this is the prediction of the arrival time. So it often based on the factors like distance, speed, and traffic. So why is this important? So the ETAs are crucial for planning and coordination. So, for example, in shipping, so knowing when a ship is expected to arrive, it helps the port and other stakeholders manage resources and reduce the congestion. So, in delivery services, so the ETAs, it allows the customer to track their packages and plan accordingly. Okay? So how they will calculate the ETA? So it can be calculated manually or by using a specialized software. So factors considered include distance, average speed, potential delays, and time of need. So here, the ETA are used in various industries. So it includes, of course, the shipping logistics. This is to track the arrival of goods and plan for their distribution. For the transportation, the inform passengers of expected arrival time and help with the scheduling. Delivery services. So to provide the customer with an update on the delivery of their orders. So if we have ETA, we also have the ETD. ETD stands for estimated time of departure. So the projection of time that is expected for a transport system to depart its point of origin or location. So what is the purpose of this ETD? So it helps the travelers plan their arrival of the departure point and ensures that the efficient coordination of the transportation services. And there are some factors to be Remember. Several factors can influence the ETD. So, including the weather conditions, traffic congestions, mechanical issues, and air traffic control delays. Another benefits of this is the ETDs are often updated to reflect the changing conditions, ensuring the accuracy for passengers and logistics operations. So I have here some example. So for example, in air travel, the ETD is expected time of aircrafts will take off, which is based on the scheduled time of the departure, or what we call the STD, scheduled time of departure. So next acronyms that we have here is what we call the PSC, or the Port State Control. So what is this port state control? So this is the inspection of foreign ships in national ports to ensure that they meet the international maritime safety, security, and the environmental standards. So the purpose of this is to enforce the international regulations. So the PSC ensures that the foreign flag ships comply with conventions and codes related to safety, pollution preventions, and the seafarer welfare. Another one is to prevent the substandard ships. So, by inspecting the ships, PSC aims to identify and address deficiencies that could lead to accidents, environmental damages, or unsafe working conditions. And another one is, of course, to promote the maritime safety. So the PSC acts as a safety net by verifying the ships are maintained and operated in accordance with established standards. So how it works? So how does a PSC works? So of course, first is the inspection regime. So the port authorities, they conduct the inspection of foreign ships visiting their ports. Another one is the targeted inspection. So the inspection are often targeted based on factors. So there are different factors like the ship type, the age, the flag state, and previous inspection history. Another one is the deficiency identification. So the PSC officers examine the various aspects of the ship. So it includes the certification, equipment,
crew qualification, and operational procedures, looking for if there's any deficiencies. So, what will happen if there's any deficiency found? So, the port state may require a corrective action. So, including the repair of detention of the ships until the issue are resolved. So, okay, again, that will be our topic for today, the acronyms of some maritime words. So I hope you take note some these acronyms and still remember some common phrases in maritime. And that's it for today. And thank you for your listening. Again, this is your instructor, Elaine.